Hey, it's all good. It's all good.
I got to keep you honest, man. I got to keep you honest. But yeah, so I think that's kind of, I mean, there's not a whole lot of NFL news cracking today. Not a lot out there. I don't know if you saw anything that came through that you wanted to discuss, man. You let me know.
Yes, there was something. I believe you mentioned or you sent me something that I barely skimmed. Something about an NFL player not giving my boy, Coach Nick Sirianni, the coach of the year, the best coach in football today, any credit. What was that?
Absolutely. So yeah, there's a little player beef here going on in terms of the Giants and the Eagles. Julian Love, safety for the Giants, has kind of come out and just said, look, Nick Sirianni's not that good. He's overrated, and pretty much talked about how anybody could coach that team. What do you think about this, man? Is this just sour grapes, or do you think that maybe there's some truth to this?
This is a strange take, and I think this, all right, this is my cold hard belief. I feel like the more difficult the job becomes, the more talented your roster is, and the younger the roster is. Okay, so we've seen this in other sports. We've seen this in basketball when Coach Steve Kerr won with the Warriors. They said he had an easy team, but quite frankly, before he took over as coach, they didn't win any titles, right? And so that's what happened with Doug Peterson as well. That's why how he got the notoriety in Philadelphia, right? He did what Andy Reid could not do. I don't know. I mean, Sirianni has had a great 2-year run just the last 2 years. And when he was the offensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts, him and Coach Frank Reich were getting it done, right? So if there's something there, I don't know. I think he's doing an amazing job, and it seems like he has helped out Jalen Hurts, right? Where am I wrong?
I don't think you're wrong. And I just wanted to add something, too, to this take here. I don't know if Julian Love is already kind of taking back his comments here or trying to change the narrative, because there was definitely some sour grapes vibe to it. And definitely he was trying to discredit Nick Sirianni's year. But he did say today, Philly fans sure don't like this one, but I'm not wrong. This is a players' league, and Philly has dogs on the roster top to bottom. It's no mystery why they're in this position. Now, that's very interesting, because he's pretty much saying, oh, no, it was respect to the players. Anyone can win. And that was not how that was originally taken. I mean, we read that the quote that he had on, I believe it was Twitter, and that was not how it was taken initially. So kind of a weird move to see him kind of going, yeah, it's the roster's really good. Like, of course the roster's really good. It's the NFL, right?
So this is the same guy who was on the defense, on the field, for a 38-7 loss early. Very recently in the playoffs. And he was also on the field when they lost by 26 points at home, when Nick Sirianni's offense put up 48 points.
Exactly. I mean, if anything, are you saying that your team doesn't have dogs or top players in the NFL? I don't really understand that statement. It's not something I would have revisited if I was Love. I would have let the comments sit where they are. Some will view it as sour grapes. Some will view it as in-division heat. It is what it is, right?
And I will say, Forr, like, I'm not going to lie. There's a part of me, right, where we're in our late 20s. We grew up where the athletes we saw on TV, they despised their rivals, right? They didn't even want to shake their hands. They didn't like to tell, in basketball, right? When the series ends, right? That was the only time you would engage with the other team. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of like this. I think the Giants should have this type of attitude. And quite frankly, the Giants had an amazing season and they outperformed. And maybe this is him trying to actually inspire and reinvigorate some sort of fire for the Giants this upcoming season so they don't get swept again by these Eagles.
That's fantastic. I completely agree with you. And I wanted to add, man, as two best friends whose teams are division rivals. I mean, we're NFC South. Even in the last 15 years, for us, it's not weird to have division talk like this, because look back on it, man. How many times did you hear other teams trashing, like my Buccaneers trashing Cam Newton, calling him overrated? I mean, I remember teams. I remember the Buccaneers teams doing that. I remember, the Saints and Falcons getting into brawls. The Buccaneers and the Falcons. I mean, who can forget those? And the Buccaneers Saints. Like, it's the NFC South has a lot of that heat, and I'm sure all divisions do. And I don't know if these takes are magnified because the Giants were just eliminated in the postseason. But it's very interesting because this is normal trash talk. I honestly wouldn't have given it the light. I probably wouldn't want my players talking about it if I'm Philadelphia, because nothing's sweeter than going out there and winning the Super Bowl and then having Sirianni be able to just have that on his resume, right?
Well, 3 parts to this. All right. First part, why would you talk back when you're the Eagles? You guys just whooped them by 31 points, and you beat them earlier in the season as well, right? Why would you strike down? You're better.
You have nothing to prove to them.
Yes, you're better than that. Second part, all right? First off, division rivalries are a thing because that's the only playoff position that's guaranteed, right? You have 4 teams in each division. Only one guaranteed playoff spot, all right? The wild card, yeah, it's there, but that's a possibility. The only guarantee is winning your division. You should have that. Third off, man, we saw some of the best division rivalries in the NFC West between Coach Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carroll. All right, that rivalry was so strong that Jim Harbaugh had to leave the NFL. All right, and they had a tremendous rivalry going back to the Pac-12 between Stanford and USC as well. So I love this.
The what's your deal, right? Do you remember this?
Oh, I love this one. Can you please explain this to our listeners, Forr?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much, if I'm not mistaken, it was Pete Carroll and USC losing a game to Harbaugh Stanford. And pretty much after the game, which a little backstory here, USC had dominated Stanford up until that point. They had been like the big brother to the little brother. Long story short, Stanford goes and runs the score up on them. And Pete Carroll's a little pissed off about it after the game and goes, "What's your deal?" And Harbaugh goes, responds back, whatever it is. And they kind of get separated. Well, Pete Carroll then goes to the NFL. He's the coach of the Seahawks for 1 year. And guess who shows up right behind Pete? His arch rival, Harbaugh, shows up, right? And there's instantly that beef. We know the history. We know the NFC championships and the rivalry. I mean, honestly, that is my favorite rivalry in the last 15 years in terms of NFL football. I just think the games are always fun to watch, even getting it this year, in the postseason. But to go back to that, man, I mean, that was like the trash talk. You had Harbaugh dissing Richard Sherman, saying that you're a corner, moved him from receiver, if I'm not mistaken, when he played on his team. Sherman didn't like him much. I mean, there's so much beef and bad blood, on those teams that there was quite frequently trash talk.
That's certainly a deep dive documentary that we have, and we'll work on it this upcoming offseason. And quite honestly, the thing too, Harbaugh beat Pete with a tougher hand, right? He had to recruit at Stanford, which means his players had to have about 3.9 and higher GPA just to be on the field. And USC was over there paying all their players. And this is well known because they got caught and they still lost. So that's a remarkable win by Jim Harbaugh.
And you know what? Kind of looking back on it in retrospective, it's kind of interesting because Harbaugh had some intel on that. He knew what was going on over there in Southern California. And that was, if I'm not mistaken, that was a year before Pete Carroll ended up leaving USC to avoid penalties, right? Because I mean, they were getting caught. They were under, he had the Reggie Bush situation. It just was a bad situation at USC. Pete knew it, and he dipped out right in time and avoided all penalties that would have came to him from the NCAA. Agreed.
And where I will give Pete credit is he's actually been loyal to Seattle. And a lot of people thought Pete would step away this season or last season or 2 seasons ago. And he's held strong, and he seems revitalized and reinvigorated and ready to go. And so this upcoming season for Seattle should be a good one.